Come with me on an exciting journey. Listen to this whole story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Imagine walking through an abandoned place. The air so heavy, every breath feels like it weighs on your chest. The wind rattles the branches above. Broken sounds like whispers in the dark. But it's not the wind, not the darkness. It's the eyes. Hundreds of tiny, cracked glass eyes, staring at you from every direction. Doll eyes, hanging from the trees. Watching, always watching. And here's the question I'll start with. Can an island filled with dolls be more terrifying than any graveyard or haunted house in the world? Welcome to La Isla de las Muñecas, the island of the dolls in Mexico, a place that has become one of the world's darkest mysteries. Its story isn't just about broken toys, but about death, spirits, legends, and a man who chose to live among the dolls until his fate ended exactly the way the legend began. The island sits deep inside the canals of Xochimilco, south of Mexico City. By day, it looks peaceful. Calm waters, tall trees, a quiet paradise. But when night falls, the beauty rots into a nightmare. Picture this, a small wooden boat carrying you toward the island. The closer you get, the stranger it becomes. Headless dolls, rotting, covered in dirt, hanging from every tree, every wall, every corner. Some with burned faces, some with missing eyes, some cracked wide open, their smiles warped into something demonic. And yet, the terrifying part isn't how they look, it's the feeling. The dolls are watching. The legend began in the 1950s with a man named Don Julian Santana. He lived on the island, alone. One day, he claimed he saw a little girl drown in the waters. He couldn't save her. Days later, a doll floated to the surface. Instead of throwing it away, he tied it to a tree. He said he was offering it to the spirit of the drowned girl. But it didn't stop there. Over the years, Julian collected doll after doll, hundreds, thousands, as if he was trying to protect himself from the spirits or silence the whispers he swore he heard. Now the island is filled with them, thousands of lifeless faces, and when you walk beneath the trees, the air grows colder, heavier, as if the island itself is alive. Julian believed it was haunted. He told family and friends he heard whispers at night, tiny footsteps around his cabin. Sometimes, he said the dolls moved on their own. People thought he'd lost his mind to loneliness, but what happened years later made everyone question that. Because in 2001, Julian was found dead, drowned in the exact same spot where the little girl had died decades earlier. The man who had spent his life hanging dolls for a drowned child ended up drowning too. Coincidence? Or did the island claim him? But the story doesn't end there. Visitors to this day swear the dolls are alive. One woman said she touched a random doll and heard a child's laugh right behind her. When she turned, no one was there. Another man was filming, pointing his camera at a doll. The moment he pressed record, the battery drained instantly. Even locals treat the island as sacred. Some refuse to go near it at night. Others believe anyone who mocks the dolls or dares to take one away will be cursed with tragedy. There's also a darker interpretation. Some believe Julian didn't just collect dolls for the drowned girl, but because he thought each doll had its own soul. He spoke to them, shared secrets with them. To him, they were friends. Psychologists call it paranoia, born from crushing loneliness. But does paranoia explain why visitors still hear whispers today? And here, we pause, because what comes next is even more disturbing. In 1987, a group of young men visited the island. What happened that night was so terrifying. It transformed the island of the dolls from a local legend into a global nightmare. The story I'm about to tell you is one of the most documented cases tied to the island of the dolls. In 1987, a group of young men from Mexico City decided to take a trip. Not to the clubs, not to the tourist spots, but to the island of the dolls. They thought it would be a fun adventure, a weird place to snap photos, then brag about later. But that trip left some of them unable to speak of it ever again. There were 4 of them. They rented a small boat, joking and laughing as they made their way toward the island. But as the sun began to sink, the mood shifted. The water around them turned darker. The trees cast shadows that felt like the entrance to a long, endless tunnel. The first doll they saw looked almost burned. Its features melted away, yet its glass eyes still gleamed in the fading light. One of the boys laughed. "Let's mess around. Hang it somewhere creepy. Get a picture." And so they did. They touched the dolls. They moved them. That was the moment everything changed. The air grew colder. The sound of water began to shift, moving unnaturally. Then one of them swore he saw a small figure dart between the trees. At first, the others laughed it off, but seconds later, they all saw it. A tiny shadow moving quickly among the branches. They pressed on, determined not to be scared. But the strangeness escalated. Their camera began switching on and off by itself. Every time they tried to film the dolls, the device shut down. Then, the battery dropped to the ground as if yanked out by invisible hands. What happened next was written in the official police report. One of the boys screamed, "Someone grabbed my hand!" When the others looked, they saw red marks across his skin, shaped like tiny fingers. That was enough. They bolted for the boat, and as they pushed away, one of them looked back and swore he saw a doll's eyes moving, following them. The police dismissed it as mass hysteria, fear, imagination. But the handprint stayed for days before fading away. From that point, the island's reputation grew darker, no longer just strange, but dangerous. And then came the whispers. Locals claimed the drowned girl's spirit wasn't alone. Every doll that Julian hung became a vessel, a prison for wandering souls. Each broken toy, more than wood and glass. Each one a cage holding something trapped between life and death. That, they say, is why people still feel watched. Why they see dolls twitch at night. But there's an even older legend. Xochimilco itself was once a place of ancient rituals. The Aztecs used its islands for sacrifices. Stories of children offered to the gods in these very waters. Some researchers believe the island sits on cursed ground, soaked in blood before Julian arrived. The dolls only woke what was already there. Science offers another angle. Psychologists talk about the uncanny valley. That eerie feeling when something looks human, but not quite. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes. A face almost real, but disturbingly wrong. Our brains detect it as danger. And maybe that's why dolls unsettle us so deeply. But does that explain the whispers, the shadows? Number. Years after Julian's death, another story surfaced. A group of tourists, led by a local guide, arrived one late afternoon. At first, everything seemed fine, but soon one of them, a young woman named Carla, struggled to breathe. She clutched her chest. "It feels like the place is pressing down on me." The guide tried to calm her, but suddenly she collapsed. What happened next haunted everyone there. Carla lay frozen, her eyes wide, her tongue stiff, as if staring at something no one else could see. Minutes later, she gasped back to life, and then whispered, "There was a girl, wet hair dripping." She came close and whispered my name. Carla had never lived in Mexico. She knew nothing about the legend of the drowned child. Yet her description matched perfectly with the girl Julian had once spoken of. Skeptics argue the island's environment is toxic. Polluted waters, damp air, mold covering every doll. Enough to cause hallucinations, dizziness, shortness of breath. Maybe Carla's body simply reacted. But how do you explain the voice that called her by name? Here's where the story deepens. Parapsychologists speak of residual hauntings, tragedy, fear, pain. All emotions so strong they imprint on a place like a recording, over and over. The island of the dolls may be one giant loop, replaying the fear of a child drowning and the madness of a man hanging dolls in her memory. But the story doesn't stop there. Because in 2017, a team of researchers spent an entire night on the island. They brought cameras, recorders, scientific equipment, and what they captured wasn't just whispers. It was something louder, clearer, something that might change everything we thought we knew about the island. What I'm about to tell you was officially documented. In 2017, a team of 5 paranormal researchers decided to visit the island of the dolls. Not as tourists, but as scientists. They carried motion detectors, high-precision audio recorders, and thermal cameras. Their goal was simple: prove the island was nothing more than a myth. Just stories, nothing more. They arrived before sunset, dropped off their gear, and the moment they stepped onto the island, something felt wrong. The lead researcher wrote in his notes, "The air here has weight. It feels alive, like the place is breathing." At first, everything was silent. They placed equipment among the trees. They started recording. But when night came, the experiment began to change. The EMF meter suddenly spiked, like it had entered an invisible field near one of the dolls. When they pointed the thermal camera, a freezing cold shape appeared. A small child, standing right next to the doll. One of the researchers tried to laugh it off. "It's just a malfunction." But seconds later, the recorders picked up a whisper. When they replayed it, they heard a voice in Spanish. "Juega conmigo." "Play with me." The voice was so clear, 2 of the team dropped everything and screamed, "No way!" And the night didn't stop there. At 3 a.m., the so-called devil's hour, one of the sensors triggered on its own. The needle slammed all the way to the end, as if something invisible had just passed by. Then, one of the dolls fell from a tree. No wind, no movement, nothing. It was caught on video. That clip later went viral online. When the team returned, their report was careful. They couldn't prove the island was haunted, but they were certain it was not normal. They called it a zone of unexplained energy. But let's go back to Julian, the man who started it all. Some people say he wasn't a victim. He was the cause, that he unknowingly invited the spirits himself. Every doll he hung was like opening a door for another spirit to enter. And over time, the island became an open grave for the dead. After his death, Julian became part of the curse. Some visitors even swear they've seen his face reflected in the water. Psychologists argue it was isolation. That extreme loneliness creates a parallel reality in the mind. Julian spoke to dolls as if they were friends, and eventually he believed they were real. But science still can't answer the bigger questions. Why do visitors from all over the world hear the same whispers? Why does everyone describe a little girl with wet hair? Is this just collective imagination, or is the island hiding something beyond science? Today, it's a tourist attraction. Hundreds of boats take people there every week. Some leave laughing, holding photos, but others return with pale faces and silent eyes. Almost everyone agrees on one thing: you never feel alone, even if you don't hear or see anything. It feels like something is watching you, breathing behind your ear. Picture this. The night is black. Trees sway in the wind. Strange sounds echo from the distance. You stand before thousands of dolls. The moon reflects on the water. And then you hear it. A child's laugh. Soft, innocent, but coming from nowhere. You spin around, and every doll's face is turned toward you, as if they all agreed in that same moment to look at you. Illusion or a message. And so, we reach the end. The Island of the Dolls isn't just a bizarre tourist spot. It's a mirror of our deepest fears. The fear of being alone, the fear of the unknown, the fear of death, and what lies beyond it. It's part legend, part truth, part human madness. And no matter how hard science tries, the island will always ask the same question. Are spirits really among us, or do we create them with our fear? Now, the question is for you. If you had the chance to spend one night on the Island of the Dolls, could you last until morning, or would the staring eyes of those dolls send you running back to the boat in the very first minute?